Air travel in 1971 still carried a certain softness. There were no metal detectors, no body scanners, no reinforced cockpit doors. You could walk into an airport with cash in your pocket, give a name that wasn't yours, and be in the air within minutes. On the afternoon before Thanksgiving, a man did exactly that. The sky over Portland was low and heavy. Not storming yet, but threatening to. The kind of sky that flattens color and makes everything appear slightly muted. People were traveling home. There was an ease in the terminal, no urgency. He stood in line like everyone else. Dark suit, pressed white shirt, narrow black tie. Nothing about him was remarkable, which may have been the most remarkable thing of all. He purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle. He paid in cash. He signed the name Dan Cooper. No one asked for identification. No one looked twice. And in that quiet exchange, something irreversible had already begun. Flight 305 lifted off shortly after 2:50 p.m. 36 passengers, 2 pilots, a routine short flight. The man took seat 18C toward the rear of the aircraft. He ordered a bourbon and soda. He lit a cigarette, a normal gesture in 1971, now strangely foreign to imagine. When the flight attendant approached, he handed her a folded note. At first, she did not read it. There is something deeply human in that moment, the assumption that whatever is written cannot possibly disrupt the ordinary rhythm of the day. He leaned toward her slightly. "You'd better look at that note." There was no tremor in his voice, no urgency, only certainty. She unfolded it. The message was simple. He had a bomb. He wanted $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, a fuel truck waiting in Seattle. A fuel truck waiting in Seattle. No ideology, no manifesto, no grand speech, just logistics. He opened his briefcase just enough for her to see wires and red cylinders. He did not display them theatrically. He did not need to. The suggestion was enough. What followed was not chaos. It was procedure. The plane circled Seattle as authorities assembled the ransom. The passengers remained unaware. Some would later say the man appeared polite, almost courteous. He smiled occasionally. He paid for his drink. There is something unsettling about composure in moments where panic would be expected. It suggests preparation, or detachment, or both. When the aircraft landed, the money was delivered, the parachutes followed, passengers were released, no one harmed, no raised voices. The event, at that point, could almost be mistaken for negotiation rather than violence. Then the plane took off again. Night had fallen. Rain streaked the windows. He gave specific flight instructions, unusually specific. Low altitude, reduced speed, landing gear partially deployed. These were not random requests. They were technical. In the cabin, he tied the ransom bag around his waist. He selected one parachute. Curiously, not the most advanced one available. He told the remaining flight attendant to go forward and close the cockpit door. She later said he did not seem afraid, just focused. At 8 p.m., somewhere over the forests of Washington, a small light appeared in the cockpit. The aft stairs had been deployed. The Boeing 727 was not designed for that to happen in flight, but it could. The pilots felt a change in pressure. A subtle shift in balance. A slight upward movement at the tail. Then stillness. Below them stretched miles of darkness, forests, rivers, wind tearing through the night at nearly 200 miles per hour. No one saw him leave. There was no dramatic farewell, no final message, only a man stepping into cold air and absolute blackness. And then, nothing. When the plane landed hours later, he was gone. 2 parachutes remained on board. His clip-on tie lay on the seat. The bomb, if it had ever been real, was gone with him. Search teams moved through dense woodland in freezing rain.
Helicopters traced possible drop zones. Agents calculated wind drift. But the Pacific Northwest does not surrender its secrets easily. If he survived, he would have landed in darkness, in freezing temperatures, in unfamiliar terrain. If he did not survive, the forest kept him. Days passed. Weeks. No body, no equipment, no ransom money recovered. Only a name, slightly misreported by the press. D.B. Cooper. An error that became permanent. The man who had boarded Flight 305 under one name had now acquired another, and in doing so, he became something stranger than a criminal. He became an absence. A silhouette stepping backward into weather. A question that never landed. When Flight 305 landed in Reno, agents approached it carefully. There is a certain expectation when boarding the scene of a hijacking. Urgency, disruption, something visibly broken. But the cabin was orderly. 2 parachutes remained untouched. A black clip-on tie rested across the seat. Ash lay quietly in the tray beside it. It did not feel like the aftermath of violence. It felt like interruption. The man who called himself Dan Cooper had not left behind chaos. He had left behind absence, and absence is more difficult to investigate. The FBI named the case Norjack, Northwest Hijacking, a sterile label for something that felt increasingly elusive. Search teams entered the projected drop zone within hours. The region was not gentle. Forests layered thick enough to block light, rivers running cold and fast, ground softened by relentless November rain. Investigators calculated wind speed, aircraft trajectory, jump timing, but even the moment of descent was uncertain. The pilots had felt only a change in pressure, a shift in weight at the rear of the aircraft. No one saw him step into the dark. Which meant no one knew precisely where he fell. And when you do not know where someone lands, you are not searching for a man. You are searching for possibility. Helicopters hovered over treetops. Agents moved in grid patterns through brush and mud. Nothing answered. No torn canopy and branches. No boot impressions preserved in soil. No fabric caught on thorns. The forest did not respond. Early assessments leaned toward probability. He could not have survived. The temperature alone made it unlikely. He jumped at night, in heavy rain, at high speed, wearing loafers. The parachute he chose was older, less maneuverable. Everything about the environment suggested finality. And yet, there were details that resisted that conclusion. He knew the aircraft model. He knew the rear staircase could deploy in flight, a fact not widely advertised. He requested 4 parachutes. Later, investigators believed this was intentional. By requesting multiple parachutes, he prevented authorities from disabling any one of them. They could not risk sabotage if hostages might use them. His flight instructions were precise: reduced airspeed, lower altitude, flaps adjusted. These were not the decisions of someone improvising. They implied preparation, which created a problem. If he was untrained, survival seemed impossible. If he was trained, disappearance seemed intentional. Both possibilities carried weight. Neither resolved. Suspects emerged in waves: former paratroopers, disgruntled veterans, men with criminal histories, men whose families insisted they were capable of such calm. Each suspect seemed promising at first glance: physical resemblance, geographic proximity, financial strain. But resemblance is not proof, and proximity is not presence. Fingerprints collected from the aircraft yielded no definitive match.
The cigarette butts, once potential anchors of identity, were eventually lost before DNA analysis could preserve them. The tie remained. Years later, microscopic analysis revealed traces of rare metals, titanium, unusual industrial particles. It suggested exposure to aerospace manufacturing or advanced metallurgy. But suggestion is not confirmation. It is only direction. And direction without destination becomes another form of absence. Then, in 1980, something surfaced, nearly a decade after the jump. A child digging along the banks of the Columbia River uncovered decaying bundles of $20 bills. The serial numbers matched the ransom. For the first time in years, the case seemed to breathe again. Money had returned, which meant something had happened. But what? Had he landed near the river and drowned? Had the money been carried downstream by current and erosion? Had someone buried it deliberately? Experts examined sediment layers. River specialists reconstructed flood patterns. Every explanation required assumption, and every assumption introduced new uncertainty. The discovery did not solve the case. It complicated it. Because the money was only partial, most of it remained missing. And partial evidence does not close a question, it enlarges it. Years moved forward. Public interest did not fade. If anything, the story hardened into folklore. Unlike other hijackers of that era, he left no ideological trail, no statements, no claims. He harmed no passenger. He asked for money, and then he stepped into weather. There is something about that simplicity that unsettles people. It suggests a man who calculated the limits of attention, who understood how systems respond, who trusted that darkness, geography, and time could complete what he began. Or perhaps he miscalculated. Perhaps somewhere beneath layers of forest floor lies a parachute long decomposed. Perhaps the storm was stronger than expected. Perhaps survival lasted only minutes. The truth remains balanced between competence and catastrophe, and that balance has never tipped. In 2016, the FBI announced it would suspend active investigation. Resources would move elsewhere. The file would remain, but quietly. It was not solved. It was not dismissed. It simply stopped advancing, which may be the most unsettling outcome of all, because most crimes collapse into explanation. They end in courtrooms. They resolve into names and photographs. This one never did. A man boarded a plane. He negotiated calmly. He opened a staircase at 10,000 feet, and he entered darkness that refused to clarify what followed. If he survived, he lived in a world that believed him lost. If he died, no one witnessed the moment. Both possibilities remain intact. And somewhere in that unresolved space, the sound of rushing wind still lingers, not as evidence, but as echo.